Hello world, and we are back. My name's Kyle Fischl, and this is going to be episode 69 of my poker vlog. I have a lot of hands to go over from my last 2-5 session at Orange City Racing and Card Club. Have some triple barrels, a four-way all-in, a lot of interesting spots. But before I get into the hands, a quick announcement that my next unofficial 1-3 meetup game will happen February 6th. This Saturday. So if you're in the area and want to play a 1-3 game with me, that's where I'll be. So now some hands. First interesting hand. An early position player raises to $15. There's one caller and I'm on the cutoff with pocket fours. Definitely gonna peel this and set mine, as well as throw some aggression out there if I get a board that I deem favorable. So I call. We're three ways to a flop of 9-9-7 2 clubs. The pre-flop aggressor bets $15 and then it folds to me. Kind of a small bet. I don't expect my opponent to have many 9s or 7s as a pre-flop aggressor, whereas I could have a bunch of 9s and 7s as a late position caller, as well as some club draws and my exact hand of a pocket pair of fours. So I raised to $45, try to get value from his two Broadway card hands and maybe like 10 jack, things like that. Well, my opponent calls. The turn is the 3 of diamonds. Now, as the literal strength of my hand has not changed, if I was ahead on the flop, I am still ahead. So with that in mind, I think I can continue here a lot of the time, put a lot of pressure on his hands that haven't really made a hand yet, and I can get value from club draws and straight draws like 10-8, things like that. So I bet $80. My opponent calls again, and I'm not very happy about this. I think it's very likely he has a 7 here. We are still heads up to a river, which is the ace of spades. Now, I don't really think my opponent is too strong here. When he checks to me, I think I really have to fire the third barrel and target exactly a 7. And maybe hands like 10s, jacks, queens, things like that, as I could still have a 9 here, and I actually balance my triple barrels of actually having a 9 with hands that would have rivered those pairs like ace 4, ace 5 of clubs, things like that, which I would play the same way and now actually beat a lot of his 2-barrel calling range, but really can't hold up to this third barrel. So I load up, I fire the clip, I fire $210 at him, really just targeting one pair type hands, not including the 9s on board. And he thinks for a bit of time and shows a 7 of hearts before folding. Pretty fortunate to get that one through. And we're starting pretty good here. Next interesting hand. A middle position player raises to $20. I'm on the button with pocket kings, and we are not gonna just call with kings on the button. Going into today, I really wanted to have a wide but consistent 3x 3-betting range. With kings, we try to 3x 3-bet to $65. My opponent calls pretty quickly, and the flop is 2-3-4 2 hearts. When he checks to me, normally I would check this back for fear of a lot of drawing hands out there, as it's a very wet board.
Somewhere along the line, you changed. You stopped being you.
When it's this low and wet, I should have priced out all of his 2-3s, 4-5s, 5-6s. None of those should really have raised or called a 3-bet. So this is actually a pretty safe board to down bet with kings, as I can get value from all heart draws, maybe even jack queen offsuit will peel one for a very small bet. So we down bet to 40. My opponent thinks for quite a long time before calling, a kind of suspiciously long time. But either way, we're heads up to a turn card, which is the deuce of hearts. When he checks to me a second time, I think I have to size up here a bit. I don't expect him to have thought so long with a flush draw. I think it's a pretty easy just call and reevaluate on the turn. So the length of time it took him to call on the flop makes me think that I'm still ahead of hearts. I don't have a heart, so that's actually good for me. He could have like ace, king, 1 heart, and he'd be pretty happy to call a second barrel. So we're gonna size up here, charge him if he has a draw of some sort. We bet $110. It doesn't take him too long before he jams all in for $475. Now the hands that I think would play this way are like 7s, 8s, 9s with 1 heart. I think they're really trying to fold out exactly what I have is a higher pair, and if not, they'll take their heart draw. I don't expect to ever be against 3-2s ever, and I don't expect to ever be against a made straight or a made flush all too often, but I think there's plenty of hands that would play this way that I'm beating, as well as like ace, jack, jack of hearts. I think that would play this way as well. So we're pretty happy to call this one. We call it pretty quickly. The river is one of the safest rivers I could ever hope for. If he somehow already had a flush, I sucked out pretty grossly. But no, he just has pocket sixes with a 6 of hearts. So fortunate to fade 14 outs there. It was not a slam dunk. And we'll take it. And we are rewarded with both the pot and some of the greatest hot chocolate. Next interesting hand. An early position player raises to $15. There's 2 callers to me. I'm in the hijack with pocket sixes. Definitely gonna call for $15 and set mine against multiple people. Well, the cutoff calls and then the button raises to 45. Way too small, honestly. Like if you're gonna 3-bet on the button into a pot of 75, you need to go like 115 minimum if you want folds, because otherwise you're just going to be playing a 6-way pot for 45 bucks a piece. And that's what happens. We go 6 ways, $45 a piece to a flop of Jack 6-5 Rainbow. Gotta love flopping a set in a massive pot with a bunch of people in it. Well, it checks all the way to me, and this is a spot where I'm going to donk lead because I do not want to give this a chance to check through. I want to start building a pot immediately, as anyone with a single jack should call. If someone had 6-5, they'd call 7-8, any straight draws, all kinds of stuff. We bet $110. Well, the cutoff who's on my direct left, who is a confirmed maniac in terms of poker, he does what's pretty standard for this particular person. He just grabs a handful of green $25 chips and throws it into the middle. Before we can even get a count of his size, it folds to the pre-flop raiser, who goes all in for about $300, and then a middle position player goes all in for about $600. Now it's back to me. A player on my direct left, who is an absolute maniac, has already invested about $500. I don't ever expect him specifically to have pocket jacks ever, and the fact that he's invested so much money, I know that if I go all in here, I should be able to win a decent sized side pot against him, even if one of these shorter stacked people have jacks. So the fact that I'm nearly guaranteed a rebate from my player to my left, I decide that I'm gonna go all in as well, and he'll be committed. So I jam. He calls pretty quickly, and because there's many side pots happening on this particular hand, I'm just gonna skip the counting and go to the run out with the pots listed on screen. So yeah, flop set over set over set over pair. Kind of a gross board, but because there's no flush draw out there, I think in my exact position, I could get away from this a lot of the time.
That ain't you! You're better than that!
But because the first 2 players to go all in had shorter stacks, I thought I was definitely priced in, even if one of them had jacks. But either way, we can't win every 4-way all in with pocket sixes. The player who was the confirmed, poker maniac, he had me covered and he had pocket 5s. We do get a smaller side pot of about $650, so, definitely lost money on the hand, but it's tough to fold a set.
But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward.
So after a hand like that, what you should do is hit the subscribe button. It helps me out a great deal. I would very much appreciate it. Thank you. Next interesting hand. So maybe a little bit tilted from losing that massive pot when an early position player raises to $30 and there's 1 caller. I'm in middle position with pocket 5s. Just gonna peel one, go for a set mine, because, the lower sets have really been working out well for me so far. Everyone else folds, so we're going 3 ways to a flop of King 10-5 2 clubs. The pre-flop aggressor bets $30, a very small bet. With a set here and a club draw, and plenty of overcards I should have connected to him. I think it's a pretty easy slam dunk raise. So I raised to $80. My opponent calls, so hoping for a low unconnected card on the turn to keep firing away. Well, the turn is the ace of diamonds. Not quite low and not quite unconnected. Queen Jack exactly just got there, but I'm really just hoping my opponent has ace king here. If he has ace king for some reason, he'll definitely pay me off. If he was peeling with ace queen, ace jack and turn an ace, he'll pay me off. So we're not going to slow down. We bet $200, hoping to get a reasonable stack to pot ratio for a river jam as long as there's no club. This opponent's been pretty sticky a lot of the time. He's been happy to call down with one pair type hands for decent sizing, so we're going to try to punish him. We're going to rep tilt, and hopefully he'll be a disbeliever with a king or an ace. In this specific sense, he folds, so we get no additional money on that set. Unlucky. Next interesting hand. A middle position player makes it $30. The cutoff calls, and I'm on the button with pocket kings. Seems to be the best hand I can win with. Not gonna just call on the button with kings a second time. So we size up to $110. It folds to the pre-flop aggressor, who goes all in for about $350, and we snap call that. And we just show because it's fun for the camera. My opponent chooses not to show, so all I'm hoping is to fade an ace. Nope, can't fade an ace. But luckily, somehow, we are still good, and we scoop a decent-sized pot there to get us back to profit. Next hand of note. A middle position player makes it $15. The hijack calls, and I'm on the cutoff with ace-jack offsuit. Gonna go for a 3x 3-bet. We raise to $45. Well, both players call. Not quite ideal to go three ways, but we're in position, so let's see a flop. Flop is Jack 10-8, all clubs. We flop top pair, but not the greatest board for us. When it checks to us, we're gonna try to get the showdown as cheaply as possible with a pair of jacks, ace kicker. We check it back. When the turn is the 8 of spades, the middle position pre-flop aggressor bets $75, and it folds to me. I don't expect him to have too many 8s here, but I think hands like Jack 9, 10-9, maybe both of those with one club, would be happy to do this exact line for which I'm ahead of. So thinking I'm ahead of a lot of hands here, as well as I think this opponent could just have a naked ace of clubs. So we're going to peel one and see if we can't get the showdown cheaply in position. So I call. The river is the ace of clubs. Very, very bad card for me. My opponent bets $200. And for that price and this board and my exact hand, there is absolutely no way I can call $200. I don't know if I can call $100 here. It's not the run out we were looking for. So we fold, and my opponent had the whole time with the old King 7 of clubs. Drawing close to dead on the flop, but smidge of life on the turn. Final hand of note. With 2 limps to me, I'm in the cutoff with ace jack offsuit. I raise to $30. Both limpers call, so we're going 3 ways to a flop of jack 5 deuce rainbow. Pretty phenomenal board for us. When it checks to us, we're going to go for a small 1/3 pot-sized bet of $35, as we want to keep my opponent's ranges as large as possible. We want them to peel with 10 9s and king queens and all kinds of stuff while building a pot with a lot of equity in our favor. Well, the $35 bet gets raised to $75, nearly min clickback by an early position player with a massive stack. I feel like this raise is actually repping 2 pair, but I mean, he really shouldn't have deuce 5 or jack 5 or any of that. And we have top, so we're gonna call this one. The turn is the 4 of diamonds, and this time my opponent bets $115. And at this point, I think my opponent's kind of capped himself a bit. Like on this specific board, he shouldn't really have a set very low. He really shouldn't have ace 3 or 3-6, and not many 2 pairs really make sense. So I think he's kind of capped to a jack at best. As he wasn't a pre-flop aggressor, he really can't have queens, kings, or aces, and I could have all of those. So I really think I'm just ahead of like king jack, queen jack, something like that. and we're definitely going to call this bet. So I call. When the river is the 5 of clubs, this is really a great card for me. It takes away some pocket 5s he could have and a lot of 2-pair possibilities. So as he's first to act, I'm thinking I'm ahead of a lot of jacks here. When he checks to me, I'm almost certain that I'm ahead of most of his jacks. So we're going to go for a very thin, narrow value bet. We are pretty much targeting just king jack, queen jack here. We bet $200.
Now, if you know what you're worth, now go out and get what you're worth. But you gotta be willing to take the hits.
With his massive stack, I think that a $200 bet is kind of a easy side call with just the jack here. So makes this bet even easier, as like I said, we could actually do this with queens, kings, aces, and theoretically we could still have pocket jacks here. Our range is super uncapped, because if I had pocket jacks here, I'd play the same way. I'd bet small, and then as he raised, call twice, and then when he finally checked to me on the river, still go for my same value. So I'm very uncapped here, and he's very capped. I think this is actually a very good value bet. Let me know what you would have done in the comments. I was actually quite shocked to see my opponent fold ace jack offsuit. So I thought I was value betting. Evidently, I was just trying to bluff a man off a chop, and we get it done. And we leave shortly after that. Into the game for $800, out of the game for $11.76. That is a profit of $376. I'm there for 6 hours, as there was a lot of swings in those 6 hours. So it was a profit of $62 an hour, or 12.5 big blinds an hour.
That's how winning is done.
Well, if you watched all the way to this point, thank you. I appreciate it. If you like my content, please consider leaving a like and subscribe. I would appreciate it. Thank you.